Hello, my fellow storytellers. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to create a procedurally generated sanded stone texture. Alright, let's get started. First off, let's delete our default cube and add a plane. Next, go to Shading and press New and look at our principled BSDF. Then Shift A, Mix RGB. We're going to be doing something a little bit different with the texture nodes, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So for our texture node, we are going to choose a noise texture, and instead of what we normally do using Node Wrangler, we're going to do and set everything up manually. So we're going to output the Mix RGB node to the vector of the noise texture. Then we're going to do Shift A and look for a Voronoi texture. Then output the Voronoi texture to the color 2 of the Mix RGB. Then Shift A, texture coordinate, and then Shift A, mapping. Output the object to the vector, then output the vector to the color 1 of the Mix RGB node. Then set the factor of the Mix RGB node to 0.08. Then output, my mistake, then search for a color ramp and output it to that. Then search for Mix RGB. Then output that. Then output that. Then make one of your colors in your Mix RGB node darker so that you can see the result. Also, we need to set this color ramp to constant. That is very important. You cannot forget that, or else your texture will not look right in the end. So what we're going to do is that we're going to fiddle with our noise texture, make it a little bit rougher, add some more roughness to that. Fiddle with the Voronoi texture a little bit. As you can see, it's working right there. Mess with the scale. Fiddle with this a little bit more. Add some distortion. There we go. That's what we're looking for. And then duplicate the Mix RGB node. And then duplicate our node setup that we have here. And move it down. Then output as before. Then output this Mix RGB node to the color 1 slot. Now we can mess with our colors. So I am going to make this that. I'm gonna fiddle with this a little bit. Make that color about around that. Let's make this a little darker. This a little lighter. Oop, not that light. There we go. Excuse me. And now let's adjust the rotation so that we could get a little bit variability within our texture. Then do that. And now we move all these nodes out of the way because we no longer need to mess with them. Now Shift A for bump map. This is where the real magic happens. This is where it starts to look like a sandstone texture, or sanded down stone, I should say. Shift A for color ramp. Duplicate the color ramp. Zoom in. And let's move these to the side. Shift A for Mix RGB. Output the Mix RGB to the height of the bump map, not the distance. And output the first color ramp to the factor of the Mix RGB node. Duplicate the Mix RGB node. And output the second color ramp to the factor of the second Mix RGB node. Then as the setup for our color nodes up here, we're going to output the color of the second Mix RGB node to the color 1 of the first MixRGB node. Then we're going to connect our textures as follows. Next, we're going to set these to ease. Then change the colors of our color ramps, and this will tell what rises and lowers on our texture. Now adjust accordingly. It's starting to look like weathered stone now, a little bit. Fiddle with that. Make this a little darker. Whoop, not too dark. Let's hit this a little bit. Make that a little smoother, and there we go. Now we're going to go to rendered view. Make sure our render is set to cycles, GPU if you have one, and denoising if you so wish. First off, another thing we need to do is we need to drag our light source to the base of our texture so we can see it responding to light. Now let me zoom in here. As you can see, you can now see how our texture responds to light. Let me move that a little closer and set the light to 50. Now let me zoom in. Okay, let's pause for a quick breather. All right, so now what we're going to do is that we're going to set the reflection maps of our texture. Shift A and search for another MixRGB node. Output this to the roughness. Duplicate a color ramp. And output this to the factor of our MixRGB node. Duplicate another color ramp. Duplicate the MixRGB node again. Output this color ramp to this to the second MixRGB node. Do as follows, and then put our textures as follows. Our texture nodes as follows. Make this a little darker so that we can see how our reflection map is going to go. Oop. And as you can see, that's a little too shiny. Let's even that out a little bit. Now let's see how the light reacts to our texture. As you can see, there's our texture. Alright guys, that's going to be it for this tutorial. See you next time.